Following breaking news this afternoon is Orange County voting to ratify the controversial ICE addendum. That was a 5-2 vote after threat of suspension and removal from office from the state if they did not kind of enter into this additional agreement with ICE. And joining us live now to talk about this situation and other political topics, as well as Kimberly Leonard, a Politico reporter and the author of the Florida Playbook newsletter. And Kimberly, we appreciate you joining us this afternoon here on Florida Live.
Yeah, definitely. I was watching the hearing very closely.
I know this is something that you have been covering in Playbook, something that you've been talking about before, because, you know, this is a local discussion here, but it really is kind of fitting into this larger conversation about what's happening in the state here.
Yeah, exactly, because the legislature passed all kinds of measures to clamp down on undocumented immigrants, but part of the way that they're doing that is really by using local governments in part of that fight. So they have all these different agreements for local law enforcement officers to do immigration enforcement. And then in this case that Orange County is dealing with, they're looking at actual transportation to detainment facilities. And so obviously one of the ones that is being talked about is the Alligator Alcatraz one that's down here outside of where I live in Miami, in the Everglades. And there's been just a lot of community outcry about it. They don't like that so many people are getting, stopped and that are afraid regarding their status, even if they are legal. They're worried about, being incorrectly sort of swept up into it all. And so Orange County is sort of the biggest, most prominent county to stand up and hesitate, I would say. Initially say no, initially kind of resist to that. And now they're going along with it, but it does seem like it's just the beginning of what could be, a lawsuit potentially, a bigger conversation with the state and things like that.
Yeah, because the conversation today was a lot about, kind of the pragmatic angle of it and kind of recognizing the fact that if they failed to ratify this, they may be removed from office, they may be suspended by the governor. And so that is something that we have seen that this governor not really hesitate to do before.
Yeah, exactly. And what happened as well, the governor was in Orlando this past weekend. He was there in part to speak at the Republican Party of Florida's meeting the following day on Saturday, but he came into town Friday morning, and Mayor Demings made it very clear that he literally thought that he and the commissioners were about to get suspended. And he had only just received the letter from Attorney General Uthmeier, because I guess it was mailed through snail mail and they had finally received it, even though it had been posted on social media. And so with the advice of the county attorney, they said, look, if you don't go along with this, that means that you will not be in a position to fight any of it because you'll no longer be in office. So that is why ultimately he says he decided to do it. And he also, his understanding of the way it was written was that they haven't had any of these transportation requests yet, so they might not even get it. So he was saying, okay, well, if it comes up at that point, we'll start dealing with it and decide, whether we can make it work, because they're already at very low, capacity within their law enforcement agencies. And so they just worry about people having to leave the jails in order to, transport someone hundreds of miles away.
So the county has voted to ratify this addendum, but the two no votes are the same two no votes that we saw with the original ICE agreement. That's Commissioner Wilson, Commissioner Simrad. Do you think the governor could go ahead and suspend them to make a statement just for voting against this now twice?
Well, I'm not sure, just because it ended up passing overall. So I'm not sure what is really meant to be gained by a no vote. But at the same time, it could be trying to send a message to other counties that try to do the same thing. So I guess we'll see. I have a message into the state attorney general's office to see what their decision is going to be. But they have signed, they have ultimately been overruled by the others. So I don't know how punishing those who said no when ultimately it went through, what that really accomplishes.
Kimberly, before I let you go, I do want to ask you about your additional reporting about Mayor Demings today in the Florida Playbook, that he's considering running for higher office.
Yeah, that's right. I got a surprise phone call yesterday by the mayor. He called me up because he had published a book over the weekend. The book reads a lot like a memoir and almost a devotional, actually. He writes a lot about his leadership, his faith, and how he overcame obstacles. And, typically when politicians write books, it means that they're interested in having voters get to know them better so that in case they run for office. And I thought, you know what, I'll go ahead and ask. And he called me up and he said, yes, he is looking into running for higher office. That may mean governor, that may mean Senate, that may mean a U.S. House seat that opens up, or maybe even another statewide office like CFO. But there's been a lot of buzz around Mayor Demings. He term limits out at the end of 2026. And so people want to know what he's going to do next. He's one of the most prominent Democrats in the state. And this was the clearest indication yet that he is floating that trial balloon and weighing what his next steps are. And he doesn't feel like he's done. So we're eager to see where he settles on that decision.
All right, Kimberly Leonard, Politico reporter and the author of the Florida Playbook newsletter. You can sign up for that, get it delivered in your inbox every morning. Always appreciate you joining us, and always good talking with you. And thanks for holding on with us a little bit today through the developing news in Orange County.
Yeah, thanks for having me.